I had always admired my sister Emily, but that admiration quickly turned into something darker the day she stole my career opportunity. Growing up, Emily was the picture of success in our family. She excelled at everything. Academics, sports, friendships, she had it all. Meanwhile, I had always been in the shadows, the quieter one, working hard but never getting the same recognition. My parents had always been proud of her, and honestly, I didn't mind. I was content with my place in the background. That was until I started to feel like I was never going to get the chance to shine, no matter how hard I tried. The breaking point came when I landed my dream job. It wasn't just a job. It was the opportunity I had been working toward for years. I had put in the hours, made the right connections, and impressed the right people. I was finally being recognized for my skills, my determination, and my dedication. The offer was everything I had hoped for, until Emily swooped in and took it from me. It started innocently enough. She called me one evening asking for a chat. "I've got something to tell you," she said, her voice uncharacteristically soft. "I've been offered the position you wanted. I'm going to take it." I thought she was joking at first. After all, she had always been the one with the easy success. But no, this time, it was real. She had been in talks with the company behind my back, and despite me being the one who was first in line, they gave her the offer instead. I felt a rush of betrayal hit me all at once. How could she? How could she take away something that I had worked for? Something that was supposed to be mine? I tried to keep my composure, tried to act like I wasn't hurt, but deep down, I was furious. Emily, my own sister, had not only taken the job that was meant for me, but had done it behind my back, with no regard for the effort I had put in. I had always thought family would have each other's backs, but this time, I had been blindsided. The worst part? She acted like it was no big deal. "It's just business," she said, as if that was supposed to make it okay. I felt my world shift under my feet. In that moment, I knew I had to make a choice. I could wallow in anger and frustration, or I could show Emily, and everyone else, that I wasn't going to let this define me. I wasn't going to let her steal my future. It was time to show her, and everyone who had doubted me, that I could create my own success story. I wasn't going to let her win. I was going to rise higher than she could ever imagine, and I was going to do it on my own terms. But how? How could I take back control of my life and prove that I was capable of succeeding, even without the career opportunity she had stolen from me? That's when I realized, maybe I didn't need that job. Maybe, just maybe, I could build something even bigger, something all my own, something that would show the world that I was more than just her little sister. Looking back, it wasn't always this way. Growing up, Emily and I were close. We shared a room, secrets, and dreams. We were each other's best friend. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. Emily always had this ability to get people's attention. It was like everything she did was automatically extraordinary. Whether it was her achievements, her personality, or just the way she lit up a room, people couldn't help but gravitate toward her. It didn't take long for our parents to notice either. They were proud of me, of course, but Emily seemed to always get the extra praise, the extra attention. It never seemed fair, but I kept my head down and tried to make my own way. I remember one evening, after a big family gathering, sitting with my mom in the kitchen. Emily had just shared that she had been promoted at her job, something that felt like a regular occurrence for her. Meanwhile, I had been working tirelessly to move up in my own career. My promotion had taken years of effort, but it was nothing compared to the speed with which Emily seemed to climb the ladder. She always made it look so easy. "You know," my mom said, stirring her tea, "Emily is such a natural leader. People love her. She's always been so successful in everything she does." I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to say, "What about me? What about the hard work I've put in?" But I stayed quiet, watching my mom beam with pride as she talked about my sister's accomplishments. It wasn't that I hated Emily. I loved her, but it was getting harder to watch her succeed at everything while I felt like I was constantly being overlooked. It was like I could never catch up, no matter how hard I tried. At first, I didn't think it mattered. After all, we were family. We were supposed to be there for each other, right? But the more I watched Emily take over every room, every conversation, every job, the more I felt like I was fading into the background. My achievements felt insignificant in comparison to hers. It wasn't jealousy at first, it was just frustration. Why was it so easy for her and so difficult for me? I buried those feelings and kept pushing forward. I had a steady job, a career that I had been working on for years. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I found pride in that. And yet, every time I made progress, Emily seemed to leap forward, leaving me in the dust. When I finally landed an interview at my dream company, I thought it was the opportunity that would finally prove that I wasn't just Emily's quieter, less successful sister. This was it. I had worked so hard to build my resume, made the right connections, and had proven myself in every possible way. It was my moment to shine. But the moment I found out Emily had secretly been in talks with the same company, I felt a knot twist in my stomach. It didn't stop there. I learned that Emily had gone behind my back, using her charm and connections to secure the job. At first, I thought I must be mistaken. After all, why would she do something like this? But when I received a call informing me that they had extended an offer to Emily instead of me, my heart sank. I was devastated. How could she do this to me? She knew how much I had worked for it, how important this job was to me. But Emily didn't seem to care. To her, this was just another opportunity to further solidify her success. The betrayal stung more than I ever could have imagined. I felt like a fool. I had trusted her, believed in her, and here she was, taking something that was mine without a second thought. And yet, when I confronted her, she didn't show any remorse. Instead, she acted like it was nothing, like I was overreacting. "Don't be so dramatic," she said, laughing it off. "It's just a job. You'll find something else." I stood there, speechless, trying to keep my emotions in check. Her words, so casual, cut deep. How could she be so indifferent? This wasn't just a job to me, it was a dream, and she had taken it away from me. But that was Emily, always getting what she wanted, always able to brush off the feelings of others without a care. As much as I hated to admit it, I realized this was more than just a career opportunity. It was the culmination of years of subtle slights, moments of being pushed aside in favor of Emily. The favoritism wasn't new. It had been building for years. Every compliment, every achievement, every time she was put on a pedestal while I was ignored, it all added up. And that's when it hit me. I had been playing second fiddle for too long. I had let her take what was mine, my chance, my dream, and my future. But no more. I was done living in her shadow, done being overlooked. It was time to take control and create my own path to success, one that would be all mine. But how? How could I do something so monumental when Emily had everything handed to her on a silver platter? The answer didn't come immediately, but deep down, I knew the only way to win was to stop trying to play by her rules. I wasn't going to compete with her anymore. I was going to build something new, something even better. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. If I was going to get my revenge, I couldn't rely on anything that came from my sister's world. I couldn't keep chasing the things she stole from me. Instead, I had to carve out my own success from the ground up. The first step was finding something that would truly allow me to stand apart, something that would prove I wasn't just living in her shadow. But starting from scratch wasn't easy. I had spent so much time watching Emily shine in everything she touched that I had neglected my own potential. I had the skills, the drive, and the connections, but I needed something more, a breakthrough idea, a way to create my own identity separate from hers. I knew I couldn't stay stuck in my old job, silently stewing in jealousy and resentment. If I was going to prove myself, I needed to take action. It started with an idea that would take me out of my comfort zone, but also set me on the path to something new. I knew I had a passion for writing. I had been jotting down articles and thoughts on the side for years, but I had never dared to make a career out of it. Emily had always been the one who was encouraged to pursue her passions. Meanwhile, I had been focused on playing it safe, sticking to what was comfortable. But now, everything had changed. I was done with playing it safe. I wanted to build something that was all mine, something that couldn't be taken away by anyone, not even Emily. I started small, freelancing for a few websites, writing blogs and articles. But I made one rule for myself.
I wasn't going to ask for help. I wasn't going to lean on any connections from my past.
I was going to build this on my own, from the ground up, and prove to everyone, most importantly, to myself, that I could be successful without relying on anyone else's help. Every night after work, I stayed up late, researching, writing, and building my portfolio. The work was grueling at first, and the pay was minimal, but I didn't care. It was the first time in a long while that I felt like I was doing something for myself, something that wasn't overshadowed by my sister. And little by little, my hard work started to pay off. By the time I'd gained some momentum, I had created a niche for myself. I was writing for well-known brands, landing gigs with companies that valued my voice and my perspective. I had finally found my confidence and my place in the world, and it felt incredible. I wasn't just another writer. I was creating something that was uniquely mine. And when I started getting more recognition, my confidence grew. It wasn't just about writing anymore. It was about proving that I had something to offer that no one could take from me. But as my success grew, so did my anger. Emily had stolen something from me that I couldn't get back. She had taken the opportunity that I had earned. And even though I had created my own success, the sting of her betrayal still lingered. I wasn't going to let her get away with it, not without facing the consequences of her actions. I began to watch her more closely. At first, it was just out of curiosity, seeing what she was up to, how her career was progressing, and if she was truly as perfect as she always seemed. But soon, it became clear that Emily was taking her success for granted. She had it all: the job, the recognition, the respect from our parents, and the perfect life. She had never had to fight for anything the way I had. She had always been handed everything she wanted, and I was done letting her take credit for things that weren't hers. I started laying the groundwork for my next move, my revenge. I knew that Emily was arrogant, and I was going to use that to my advantage. She had underestimated me for years, and I was going to make sure she paid for that mistake. It wasn't going to be obvious at first. I wasn't going to confront her head-on. No, my revenge was going to be subtle, calculated, and effective. I was going to show her that I could succeed on my terms, and that she wouldn't be able to take credit for my success ever again. The first thing I did was make sure I built my brand. I didn't just want to be known for my work. I wanted to be known for who I was. I began sharing my story, talking about how I had created my career from scratch, how I had worked tirelessly to get to where I was. I made sure to highlight how much effort and sacrifice it had taken me to achieve what I had, emphasizing that it wasn't just handed to me like it had been for Emily. I wanted the world to see me as someone who had earned their success, not someone who had been given a leg up. The next step was to push Emily further into the spotlight, but not in the way she expected. I started subtly pointing out the cracks in her perfect life. I began sharing stories of how she had gotten her position, how she had leveraged connections and other advantages to get ahead. I wasn't slandering her. I was simply presenting the facts in a way that painted a different picture than the one she had been showing the world. I knew Emily well enough to know that her ego would get the best of her. She wouldn't be able to resist trying to one-up me, and that's when I was going to strike. I would keep pushing her until she exposed herself as the fraud I knew her to be. Her perfect life wasn't going to last, and I was going to be the one who made sure the truth came out. I was finally playing the game on my terms. I was no longer the quiet sister living in the shadow of Emily's success. I was a force to be reckoned with, and I was going to make sure that everyone, especially Emily, knew it. The day of reckoning had arrived. My plan was in full motion, and I could feel the tension building as Emily continued to play into my hands. I had subtly fed the narrative, dropped hints, and played the game just long enough for her to feel the pressure without realizing what was coming. She thought she was invincible, that nothing could touch her or her carefully crafted image. But now, the walls were closing in. Emily had invited the family to a big dinner at her house to celebrate a promotion at work. She was always the one who threw these lavish gatherings, and as usual, everyone was singing her praises. They saw her as the successful, confident sister, the one who had it all. I showed up, wearing a smile, but with a quiet satisfaction bubbling inside me. Tonight was the night I would expose the truth about her success, and I had prepared every word carefully. As the evening went on, I made sure to keep my distance, but also to let Emily's arrogance shine through. She was bragging about the opportunity she had at work, how she had practically earned everything herself, and how much everyone was congratulating her for being such a great leader. It was all so rehearsed, so predictable. The more she talked, the more the cracks in her story began to show. The more I watched, the more I could see her insecurities hidden behind that perfect smile. I decided it was time to make my move. I casually mentioned my new project, the one I had been working on for months, and made sure to drop a few subtle references to how hard I had worked for it. I didn't even need to say much. The contrast between our paths was enough. She had been handed opportunities, while I had fought for mine. I could see the way she stiffened as she tried to maintain her composure. She knew what was coming, but she didn't know how to stop it. It was when the topic of her job came up that I really turned the tables. I asked her about her promotion, about how she had gotten the position in the first place. Her response was full of pride, but it was also filled with little inconsistencies. She claimed she had earned it, but I knew the truth. I knew she had relied on connections, and that she had been strategically placed in the position, while I had fought for every step of my career. I had watched as she casually brushed off the real work I had done, but tonight, I wasn't going to let her get away with it anymore. So, I asked her, "How did you land that position, Emily? I mean, it's a huge promotion, right? How did you manage to convince them to give you the job?" The entire room fell silent. I could see the color draining from her face. Her mind was racing, trying to come up with an answer that wouldn't expose her, but she was caught. The facade had cracked. Everyone was watching now. Our parents, our relatives, the friends who had always admired her. They were all hearing her lie for the first time, and I could see her scrambling for a way to salvage her story. She stumbled over her words, trying to justify her promotion with vague explanations and empty boasts. But I had already planted the seed, and the doubts began to fester. The look of confusion on everyone's faces made it all too clear. They had never questioned her success before, but now they were starting to see the cracks in her perfect image. The truth was beginning to sink in. She had been taking shortcuts, using her charm and connections to get ahead, while I had been the one working tirelessly, fighting for every opportunity. I could feel the power shift in that room. The satisfaction of watching her unravel was indescribable. She had always been the golden child, the one everyone admired. But now, the truth was out, and she was exposed for what she really was. Someone who had taken the easy route, someone who didn't deserve the credit she had always received. As Emily tried to backpedal, I stood tall, calm, and collected. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't frustrated. I was in control. I had made my point, and now it was time for her to face the consequences of her actions. "You know, Emily," I said, my voice steady, "I've always admired your confidence. But tonight, it's clear that you've been relying on your connections and not your own hard work. I'm proud of what I've achieved. I didn't need anyone's help to get here. I built my success on my own terms." The silence in the room was deafening. I could see the guilt and the panic in Emily's eyes. She realized that she had lost the battle. She had tried to play the perfect daughter, the perfect sister, and the perfect employee, but it was all a facade. Now, it was all falling apart. In that moment, I felt a rush of power. Not because I had humiliated her, but because I had finally shown everyone the truth. I had taken control of my own story, and I had proven that I didn't need anyone else to succeed. My success wasn't a gift. It was the result of my own hard work, and no one could take that away from me. The aftermath of that dinner felt like a shift I hadn't anticipated. For years, Emily had been the center of attention, the golden child who could do no wrong. But after that night, things were different. The family began to see her in a new light. No longer was she the flawless, successful daughter and sister. The cracks had been exposed, and while Emily tried to brush it off and resume her usual bravado, I knew she had been shaken to her core. For me, things had changed too, but not in the way I thought they would. I thought that after that moment, I would feel vindicated. But instead, there was a calm that settled over me. I had finally taken control of my life, my narrative, and proven to everyone, including myself, that I could create my own path.
It wasn't about putting Emily down, it was about standing up for myself. I realized that the true victory wasn't in watching her unravel, but in how much I had grown, how much I had taken control of my own destiny. In the weeks that followed, Emily tried to patch things up, but I wasn't interested. She started calling more often, texting me apologies, and making excuses. "I was just trying to get ahead," she said. "I didn't mean to take anything from you." But I could hear the desperation in her voice. She wanted everything to go back to the way it was, where she was the golden child, the one everyone adored. But that was no longer possible. Our family had seen her for what she truly was. No amount of apologies could erase the way she had manipulated her way through life, or the way she had tried to take from me without giving anything in return. I could have forgiven her, maybe, but it didn't feel right anymore. I had spent my whole life trying to prove my worth to her, to our parents, to everyone. I wasn't about to go back to being the quiet, overlooked sister just because she said the right things. The trust had been broken, and once that happens, there's no going back. Meanwhile, my career was soaring. The attention I had always wanted was finally mine, not because of my last name or my family connections, but because of my talent, my hard work, and my perseverance. I was no longer living in Emily's shadow. I had created my own space, and I was thriving in it. I could see the difference in the way people viewed me. There was no longer that undertone of comparison to Emily. I was simply me, and that was enough. My success wasn't just mine to enjoy. It was a message to anyone who had ever been overlooked or underestimated. Emily, on the other hand, struggled. Her perfect world had been shattered, and she couldn't rebuild it. She started distancing herself from the family, likely because she couldn't face the reality of what had happened. Our parents, while still loving her, had begun to question her actions. They couldn't ignore the way she had behaved anymore. The praise they once heaped upon her seemed more hollow now. And as much as she tried to play the victim, the damage had been done. She tried to make up for it by going above and beyond in her career. But it was clear to everyone that the charm she had once relied on no longer had the same effect. People began to see her for what she truly was. A woman who had gotten ahead through manipulation and connections rather than her own merit. The respect she had once commanded slowly started to erode. She attempted to patch up her relationship with me, but I had made up my mind. I had learned a powerful lesson through all of this, that I didn't need her approval to be successful. I didn't need her to validate my worth. And while I could never forget how she treated me, I didn't need to carry that weight anymore. I had built my own success, and that was something I could be proud of. A few months later, Emily made one last attempt to reach out to me. She wanted to meet, to talk things over, and maybe fix what had been broken. But I declined. It wasn't about holding a grudge. It was about knowing my worth. I had come to terms with everything that had happened, but I no longer needed to be a part of her narrative. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just free. I didn't need to keep fighting for approval. I didn't need to keep proving myself to anyone, least of all Emily. I had created my own success story, one that didn't involve anyone else, and that was enough for me. Looking back, I realized that my journey wasn't just about getting back at Emily. It was about finding my own strength. It was about creating something that was mine, something I could stand on without feeling like I was always second best. I wasn't going to let her take that away from me, and I wasn't going to let anyone else try to diminish what I had achieved. And as for Emily, she would always be my sister, but things would never be the same between us. She had lost more than just her perfect wedding or career success. She had lost my trust. And that was the one thing she could never get back.